do not dismiss what you have been sensing, because the feeling that something has been gathering beneath the surface is not your imagination. For days, you may have carried the uncomfortable impression that life has been pressing against an invisible barrier, as though every effort required more energy than usual and every answer remained just out of reach. Perhaps you could not explain why motivation came and went without warning, or why a strange anticipation lingered even when nothing obvious had changed around you. That quiet pressure has a source. This is not simply another page turning on the calendar. Thursday, July 16th, marks the moment when a long-building celestial pattern reaches the point where it can finally express itself in a tangible way. As the moon enters Virgo, it moves directly into the center of an astrological formation, so exceptionally uncommon that the previous appearance of this same pattern dates back to the era when the printing press was transforming human civilization. That comparison is not meant to create drama. It reflects the extraordinary rarity of what is unfolding above us. Yet the most remarkable part is not the rarity itself. While many discussions focus on worldwide transformation, very few people are paying attention to how intensely personal this moment can become. Among all 12 zodiac signs, 3 are standing directly in the path of an opportunity that feels almost impossibly precise. The shift arriving for them is not vague inspiration or abstract potential. It has the unmistakable feeling of finally receiving the missing piece that has been absent from their lives. As though the universe has quietly carried the answer for a very long time and has chosen this exact moment to place it into their hands. If your sign is one of those 3, then understanding today's energy before it fully unfolds matters more than you realize. Think back over the past several nights. Have you found yourself awake without knowing why, carrying an unexplainable weight in your chest, unable to silence a steady current of tension that refuses to disappear even when everything around you appears calm? That sensation has not been random. There is a very specific astrological reason why your body and your intuition may have been responding this way, and understanding that connection will become increasingly important as we continue. Before we reach that explanation, however, you need to see the much larger picture. Without understanding the architecture of the sky, it becomes almost impossible to appreciate why this week has felt so unusual. What has been developing is far from ordinary, even though most people continue moving through their routines without recognizing the magnitude of the patterns surrounding them. Imagine a storm so immense that it begins long before anyone notices the clouds. That is the closest comparison to what is occurring now. Far beyond the planets that shape everyday moods, the 3 great outer planets, Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, are participating in an exceptionally rare geometric arrangement known among astrologers as a minor grand trine. Some practitioners describe it as the outer planet triangle, while others prefer the name magic triangle. The title matters far less than its significance, because alignments of this kind are among the rarest ever witnessed across human history. Pluto remains in Aquarius. Uranus continues its journey through Gemini. Neptune stands in Aries at the exact midpoint between them, creating 2 flawless sextiles, while Uranus and Pluto complete a harmonious trine. With Neptune serving as the balancing point of the entire formation, this exact celestial structure emerges only about once every 500 years. The previous cycle unfolded during one of humanity's greatest turning points. It was an age when widespread literacy began expanding beyond the privileged few. The invention and spread of the printing press carried knowledge into ordinary homes for the first time. Religious reformations reshaped entire societies. Established systems of authority that had appeared permanent suddenly lost their grip, and generations born afterward entered a world so transformed that the previous order became almost impossible to imagine. That historical scale helps us understand the symbolism of the present moment. Pluto, moving through Aquarius, continues dismantling outdated structures that can no longer support humanity's future. Uranus in Gemini accelerates profound changes in thought, communication, and the exchange of ideas. Neptune, traveling through Aries, steadily dissolves illusions that once seemed unquestionable, replacing them with direct spiritual awareness that cuts through confusion with remarkable clarity. Yet there is another layer many people overlook. These outer planets move with extraordinary patience. Their influence accumulates quietly over years, almost like electricity gathering inside a storm cloud that has not yet released its lightning. Their presence alone does not immediately transform daily experience. They require activation. They wait for faster celestial bodies, the Sun, the Moon, Venus, or Mercury, to move across sensitive points and translate vast generational forces into personal events that can be experienced in ordinary life. That is exactly why today carries such significance. The waiting phase reaches its turning point. The dormant current finally finds its pathway. If the past several days have felt strangely unreal, almost as though you were trying to walk through dense fog without seeing the road ahead, there is a reason for that sensation as well. Perhaps conversations felt incomplete, plans became uncertain, or your intuition kept insisting that something important was approaching, even though you could not identify what it was. That atmosphere did not emerge without cause. It has been building through a sequence of astrological events that prepared the ground for what is happening now. The chain began on July 4th, when Mars formed a direct conjunction with Uranus in Gemini. That meeting carried the force of sudden lightning, striking without warning. Unexpected discoveries surfaced. Detours interrupted carefully organized plans. Situations that appeared stable shifted abruptly, leaving many people wondering how everything changed so quickly. If your week opened with surprising developments or circumstances that completely escaped your expectations, this alignment explains why. Mars joining Uranus rarely asks for comfort or permission. Instead, it removes whatever has become an obstacle, often with startling speed, leaving you surrounded by fragments of an old reality before you fully understand what has disappeared. Then, on July 6th, another important chapter unfolded as the Sun formed a square with Saturn. If the Mars and Uranus conjunction represented the explosive moment of disruption, the Sun and Saturn square symbolized the profound stillness that followed. After the initial shock faded, reality demanded attention. Obligations that had been postponed could no longer remain hidden. Responsibilities waiting quietly in the background suddenly stepped into full view, insisting that they be acknowledged, and that growing realization prepared the emotional landscape for everything that continues from this point forward. What happened next may have felt less like a series of isolated events, and more like life, steadily removing every place you once found comfort. Without warning, it could have seemed as though every responsibility you had postponed suddenly arrived together, demanding your attention all at once. The emotional weight became impossible to ignore, and many people interpreted that heaviness as exhaustion or bad timing. In reality, the sky was guiding you through another essential stage of this unfolding process. On July 7th, Neptune stationed retrograde, and whenever Neptune slows before reversing direction, the invisible line separating fantasy from truth begins to fade. The comforting narratives that once protected you gradually lose their power. Excuses become less convincing. Emotional avoidance becomes more difficult to maintain. Hidden truths that have remained beneath the surface begin rising into conscious awareness, regardless of whether you feel prepared to face them. That is why, by the time this week fully arrived, you were already emotionally exposed. The confidence you once relied upon may have felt less certain. Your usual answers no longer carried the same reassurance. Somewhere deep inside, you found yourself searching for something genuine, something stable enough to trust, while everything familiar seemed to shift beneath your feet. Then another important movement entered the story. On July 9th, Venus crossed into Virgo, but this transition was never meant to be gentle or uneventful. Instead of finding calm, Venus stepped directly into one of the most demanding celestial arrangements of the entire sequence. This is also the hidden explanation behind the strange emotional pressure you may have struggled to describe. That persistent feeling that something was incomplete, that quiet discomfort lingering beneath your daily routines, was not without purpose. As Venus reached the early degrees of Virgo, she simultaneously encountered the powerful influence of both Neptune and Pluto. On July 13th, Venus formed an exact quincunx with Neptune in Aries, and only hours afterward completed another exact quincunx with Pluto in Aquarius. Those two exact quincunxes converging upon Venus created one of astrology's most distinctive formations, the Yod, often called the finger of God. If that name sounds dramatic, its symbolism explains why so many people have felt stretched beyond their emotional limits during these recent days. The quincunx is widely regarded as one of astrology's most difficult aspects because it links signs that naturally struggle to understand one another. Their elements differ. Their motivations differ. Their methods of expressing energy seem to speak completely different languages. There is no obvious compromise waiting between them, no comfortable middle ground, and no straightforward solution that immediately resolves the tension. When two quincunxes focus their pressure on the same planet, that planet becomes the center of an extraordinary amount of energetic adjustment. In this case, Venus carried that burden. The experience resembles attempting to assemble a puzzle while discovering that none of the pieces appear to fit together, even though every instinct tells you the completed picture exists somewhere just beyond your reach. Venus, moving through Virgo, naturally wants order. She seeks clarity through careful observation. She prefers practical answers, organized plans, measurable progress, and problems that can be solved through thoughtful analysis. Yet Neptune in Aries dissolves certainty instead of strengthening it, gradually washing away boundaries that once appeared solid. At the same time, Pluto in Aquarius insists that transformation begin at the deepest possible level, refusing superficial improvements and demanding complete reconstruction from the foundation upward. Under those conditions, ordinary logic cannot produce satisfying answers. Greater effort alone cannot remove the pressure. In fact, the harder you attempted to analyze every possibility, the more trapped your own thoughts may have become. That is the emotional landscape many people have been carrying, the unexplained tension that followed you throughout the day, the sensation of standing between choices that both seemed impossible, the recurring inner voice insisting that an essential piece had not yet revealed itself, while offering no clue about what that missing piece might actually be. If those feelings have accompanied you recently, they were not imaginary. They reflected the immense collective pressure generated by the finger of God itself, concentrating attention upon what must eventually change. The difference is that today marks the point where that accumulated pressure finally begins to release. Before reaching this moment, however, another event quietly prepared your heart for what comes next. Earlier in the week, on Monday, the new moon arrived at 21 degrees of Cancer, and it carried far more than its own emotional influence. Mercury retrograde stood beside both the sun and the moon, weaving memories from the past directly into present experience. That combination encouraged forgotten emotions to return with surprising intensity. Perhaps someone from your past unexpectedly contacted you. Perhaps a memory you believed had long disappeared suddenly resurfaced with remarkable clarity. Perhaps a wave of nostalgia arrived so powerfully that it interrupted your concentration and pulled you back into emotions you thought had already been resolved. Mercury retrograde blurred the boundary between thought and feeling until they became almost impossible to distinguish from one another. Your mind and your heart began speaking the same language, making every recollection feel immediate instead of distant. The Cancer new moon deepened that emotional openness. Whether welcomed or resisted, It gently broke apart protective walls that had quietly surrounded your inner world. That vulnerability was never evidence of weakness. It served a far greater purpose. Genuine breakthroughs cannot fully enter a life that remains completely guarded. The answer you have been searching for cannot settle into place while every emotional doorway remains locked from the inside. During the first half of this week, the universe was not attempting to wound you. Instead, it was patiently removing layer after layer of emotional armor so that you would become capable of receiving what had already been moving toward you. All of those earlier events were preparing a single moment, and that moment arrives today. On Thursday, July 16th, at 8 o'clock in the evening, the moon reaches 0 degrees of Virgo and crosses an important threshold. Although the moon is the fastest moving body in astrology, its speed is precisely what gives it extraordinary influence during moments like this. It functions like the minute hand of a great celestial clock, translating slow generational forces into experiences that can be felt in everyday life. As soon as the moon enters Virgo, it moves directly toward the apex of the yod, the exact focal point where all of the emotional strain, uncertainty, and accumulated pressure have been gathering throughout the week. And that single movement becomes the turning point that transforms everything prepared up to this moment into something finally ready to unfold. The turning point arrives because the moon approaches this moment in a completely different way than Venus ever could. Venus searched for answers through organization, improvement, and careful evaluation, but the moon follows another language entirely. It does not sort every possibility into perfect order or search endlessly for logical explanations. Instead, it listens to the wisdom carried inside your emotions and your body. That is why today's shift cannot be understood through analysis alone. The clarity arriving now is not intellectual before it is emotional. It begins as a feeling so unmistakable that your entire body recognizes the truth before your mind has enough time to explain it. Suddenly, what seemed confusing for days no longer requires endless interpretation. The answer is not arriving because new facts have appeared. The answer was already present. What changes is your ability to recognize how every scattered experience has been connected all along. It resembles standing inside dense fog for so long that you begin believing the landscape no longer exists, only to watch the mist quietly dissolve until the road that was always waiting becomes impossible to overlook. The emotional noise generated throughout the previous 2 weeks gradually loses its grip. The uncertainty begins falling away. Without forcing anything, the direction you need to take becomes remarkably clear, not because someone tells you what to do, but because every part of your inner world suddenly agrees on what has been true from the beginning. This is the breakthrough that the entire sequence has been preparing. And for 3 zodiac signs, its impact reaches far beyond an ordinary realization. For Leo, this moment becomes the point where tremendous expansion finally finds something strong enough to support it. If your sun, moon, or rising sign is Leo, then this month has probably already felt unlike anything you've experienced in years. Jupiter, the planet associated with growth, opportunity, and abundance, entered your sign for the first time in 12 years. Even if you could not explain it, you likely sensed a growing confidence inside yourself. New possibilities began appearing. Attention seemed to find you naturally. Opportunities to express your creativity or step into greater visibility arrived whether you intentionally pursued them or not. Yet despite all of that momentum, something still felt incomplete. The vision kept expanding, but there was no dependable structure beneath it. Your ambitions stretched farther than your resources. Your inspiration moved faster than your foundation. It was as though an extraordinary palace was taking shape while resting upon unstable ground. Today introduces the missing element. As the moon enters your second house of finances and self-worth, it forms a conjunction with Venus, directing your attention towards something far more practical than inspiration alone. For you, the answer centers upon financial stability. It appears through the resources that allow your larger dreams to become sustainable instead of temporary. This may arrive through a salary discussion that finally shifts in your favor, an unexpected source of support, or a practical financial strategy that transforms an exciting possibility into a realistic future. The Virgo Moon contributes qualities Jupiter alone cannot provide. It offers patience where excitement once dominated. It introduces careful planning where enthusiasm rushed ahead. It replaces scattered effort with a methodical blueprint capable of supporting lasting success. Every powerful vision eventually requires structure, and today that structure begins revealing itself. Pay close attention to every financial detail crossing your path on Thursday. A conversation you almost ignore, a number that catches your attention, an email connected with money, or even the practical discussion you have been postponing may contain the exact piece your larger vision has been waiting for. Do not underestimate what appears insignificant, because the strongest foundations are often built from decisions that seem surprisingly ordinary at first. Gemini, your story unfolds differently. Recent weeks have likely felt like standing inside a whirlwind that never stopped spinning. On July 4th, Mars formed its conjunction with Uranus directly in Gemini, creating a level of disruption capable of changing almost anyone's direction. Unexpected developments arrived rapidly. Plans shifted without warning. Information poured toward you faster than your mind could comfortably organize it. At the same time, your ruling planet, Mercury, continued its retrograde motion, making communication feel unusually complicated, as though every important message became tangled before reaching its destination. Your intelligence never disappeared. Your adaptability remained one of your greatest strengths. Yet beneath all of that brilliance, exhaustion quietly accumulated. Your nervous system has been carrying far more than anyone else realized. Today, as the moon enters Virgo, it activates your fourth house, the part of the chart connected with home, family, emotional roots, and the deepest foundations of your life. At the same time, it forms a square to your Gemini placements. This is not the kind of square that politely suggests change. It insists that something essential must be addressed. For you, the missing piece is not another opportunity, another conversation, or another brilliant idea. It is stillness itself. That realization may sound almost disappointingly simple, yet its simplicity is exactly why it has remained hidden. You have been adapting so quickly, thinking so rapidly, and responding to constant change so continuously that you forgot to examine the foundation beneath all that movement. The Virgo Moon redirects your attention inward. It encourages careful revision rather than endless expansion. It asks you to examine your home, your daily routines, your family dynamics, and the environment supporting your life. Somewhere within those foundations exists one adjustment that quietly unlocks everything else you have been trying to accomplish. The insight may involve where you live, how you organize your personal space, or the people with whom you share your most private moments. Once that realization appears, the ideas and innovations sparked earlier this month suddenly arrange themselves into a practical direction that finally makes sense. Give yourself permission to step away from constant interaction for a single day. Put aside the endless stream of information. Leave the noise behind. Spend time where silence has room to speak. The answer you have been chasing has never been hiding inside greater activity. It has been patiently waiting beneath the quiet all along. Pisces, your lesson arrives with a different emotional texture, and it deserves your full attention because the truth approaching today may first feel uncomfortable before it becomes deeply healing. Saturn has continued moving through your sign, placing extraordinary emphasis upon your identity and asking far more from you than you expected. At times, it has felt as though you were carrying a responsibility that never seemed to belong to you in the first place. Throughout this period, Saturn has consistently taught lessons about boundaries, discipline, commitment, and remaining grounded whenever your natural instinct encouraged you to surrender completely to the current. And that lesson becomes essential for understanding what comes next. If you are a Pisces, I already know this season has not felt gentle. There have been moments when it seemed as though every lesson arrived wrapped in limitation, as if life kept closing one door after another while insisting that this was somehow preparing you for something greater. At times it may have felt unfair, almost as though the universe placed invisible boundaries around your life and called those boundaries wisdom. The weight has been real, and the emotional fatigue has been impossible to ignore. Yet none of those experiences have been random. Today, as the moon moves into Virgo, it stands directly opposite your sign and illuminates your seventh house of partnerships. This opposition brings another person into focus, someone who may appear as a partner, a trusted mentor, or simply an individual whose presence reflects truths back to you with remarkable precision. Through that encounter, you are likely to recognize something about yourself that you have not been fully willing to acknowledge until now. The realization may initially feel uncomfortable because it asks you to release a dream you have been protecting for far longer than you realized. Yet the remarkable truth waiting beneath that disappointment is this: the dream itself was never your final destination. It was only the shelter that carried you toward the person you were becoming. Like a cocoon that exists only until transformation is complete, it served its purpose before quietly asking to be left behind. The breakthrough arrives when you finally understand that what you believed you had lost was never meant to accompany you forever. The missing piece reveals itself through a completely different understanding of strength. You begin recognizing that healthy boundaries are not prisons designed to restrict your spirit. They are the framework that allows your gifts to survive and flourish. Structure does not extinguish inspiration. It protects inspiration long enough for it to become real. Someone may offer practical advice, honest observations, or grounded guidance that challenges your expectations. Your first instinct may be to resist those words because they seem to contradict the dreams you've been holding so tightly. But look deeper. They are not diminishing your potential. They are showing you the ground where your future can actually be built. Saturn has been patiently preparing you for this exact encounter. Every delay you endured, every difficult lesson in self-discipline, every moment you chose responsibility instead of immediate comfort, every time you accepted a necessary no, even though your heart desperately wanted yes. Each experience has quietly shaped your readiness for today. The reward for that perseverance does not arrive through isolation. It comes through relationship. Allow yourself to be seen honestly. Welcome the reflection instead of fearing it. You may discover that genuine clarity strengthens you far more than comforting uncertainty ever could. Yet this breakthrough is only the opening chapter. The moon entering Virgo today is not the conclusion of the story. It is the foundation upon which an even larger sequence immediately begins to unfold. The practical insight, emotional stability, and grounded awareness you receive on Thursday become essential because they are almost immediately expanded by the next wave of planetary activity. On July 18th, Uranus and Pluto complete their exact trine, forming the central support of the extraordinary 500-year alignment already unfolding across the sky. Whatever practical realization the Virgo moon places into your hands does not remain small or private for long. It begins growing beyond the personal level. What starts as an individual breakthrough gradually becomes connected to broader collective change. A private insight develops into something capable of influencing the larger world around you. Then, on July 20th, Jupiter opposes Pluto, while simultaneously forming a trine with Neptune, creating a celestial pattern that some astrologers describe as a planetary cradle. Within that configuration, the enormous tension between personal expansion and profound collective transformation finds expression through the visionary influence of Uranus and Neptune. Some astrologers have gone so far as to describe this sequence as the symbolic relaunch of civilization itself. Whether or not that description feels dramatic, one truth remains unmistakable. None of those tremendous outer planet energies can be integrated wisely without the grounding influence provided by the Virgo Moon on July 16th. Without the practical awareness, humility, discipline, and careful attention to detail awakened today, those larger cosmic forces could easily become overwhelming. Great ambition without humility creates arrogance. Extraordinary vision without practical execution remains only imagination. Revolutionary change without thoughtful direction easily descends into confusion. That is why today's missing piece matters so deeply. It is not simply an emotional revelation. It is the structural support that determines whether transformation develops with purpose or loses itself in disorder. By recognizing it, embracing it, and acting upon it, you become part of the living bridge connecting an old chapter of history with whatever future is now beginning to emerge. This is why today deserves your full attention. Do not allow the opportunity to drift past unnoticed. I understand how unsettling this energy has been. The past 2 weeks may have felt like standing inside a storm, while every familiar certainty scattered into the air around you. You kept reaching for stability while everything continued moving faster than expected. Yet something changes today. The circumstances themselves may not disappear overnight, but your relationship to them transforms completely. The movement finally reveals its hidden design. The confusion begins, organizing itself into a meaningful pattern. You recognize that every unexpected event, every emotional challenge, every difficult lesson has been guiding you toward this precise realization. The answer was never waiting somewhere outside of you. The missing piece was an internal awakening. The moment when your emotional wisdom finally aligns with everything your mind has been struggling to understand. As the moon enters Virgo today, resist the temptation to overanalyze what you feel. Do not rush to control every outcome or explain every emotion before it has fully arrived. Allow the clarity to settle naturally. Once it does, you may discover something surprisingly comforting. Everything you believed you were searching for has already been within your reach. The only thing missing was the perspective needed to recognize it. Now, the uncertainty begins dissolving. The mental noise gradually grows quiet. The fog that has surrounded your path slowly disappears. Standing calmly beneath all of that movement is a simple truth that has patiently waited for you to notice it. The Virgo moon does not demand attention through drama. Instead, it quietly brings order where confusion once ruled. It separates what truly matters from everything that never deserved your energy. It places practical priorities before you with unmistakable clarity and gently encourages you to move forward. If you have been waiting for reassurance that you are walking in the right direction, if you have hoped for unmistakable confirmation from the universe before taking your next step, allow today to become that confirmation. This is the moment the missing piece reveals itself. What you choose to build with it begins now. Thank you for spending this time here and sharing this journey. If this message resonated with you and you would like to continue exploring these astrological insights together, consider subscribing for future videos. I would also love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Until we meet again, take good care of yourself, and I look forward to seeing you in the next message.